the Education, Technology, and Student Services Committee meeting. If you are participating via computer and smartphone, etc., and video, Zoom recommends that as a speaker, when you're called upon, please look into the camera when talking instead of looking at yourself. To eliminate and reduce distractions during the Zoom session, notifications from any messaging devices, applications, ringtones, and etc. that may be running on your desktop, please mute those in the background. Please be aware of your audio settings to eliminate feedback or unnecessary sounds. If you are using a telephone to participate in this meeting and you have signed up to speak, please know that *6 allows you to mute and unmute your phone, and *9 allows you to raise your hand to be recognized. But I think the chair, Mrs. Hogan, has before her a list of people who registered to speak. I do believe Mrs. Hogan would like to suggest a change in order to the board, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Hogan and the board secretary for the roll call, and then you can speak to your proposed change, Ms. Hogan.
Okay, thank you. So yes, can we do the roll call for attendance?
Absolutely. Ms. Hogan.
Present.
Mrs. Denon.
Here.
Mr. Brophy.
Here.
Ms. Nyman. I thought I had seen Ms. Nyman. Ms. Nyman, you are muted. Okay. I do see Ms. Nyman. I'm going to move on. Mrs. McWhorter.
Here.
Mr. Updegrove. Okay, I have not seen Mr. Updegrove. I am going to move on. Mr. Hemingway.
Here.
Ms. Deeroff. Ms. Deeroff, I see you, but you are muted.
Nyman's here.
Thank you, Ms. Nyman.
It wasn't letting me unmute.
Okay. Ms. Deeroff, I can see you. I don't know if you might be having the same
Okay,
problem.
now,
Oh, yep, you're here. Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Foose.
Roger Updegrove's on.
Thank you, Mr. Updegrove.
Yes, I'm here.
All present.
Thank you. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you. Okay, so the proposed change that we have to tonight's agenda, is simply to move public comment until after the presentation of, until after the graduation presentation, the senior update. And that is so that parents and, well, so that community members, have the most up-to-date information and are able to gear their comments towards that. So are we okay with that, or can we just move on?
McWhorter is good with that.
Mr. Updegrove's good with that.
It would probably be easier just to say, is anybody opposed? Okay, hearing none, I guess we can just move on. Okay, so next up is approval of the minutes from, March 3rd, the March 3rd meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Updegrove.
Mr. Updegrove?
McWhorter
Motion.
seconds.
McWhorter seconds. Can we get a voice vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. So those minutes are approved. Moving forward, I'm going to pass the pass it over to Mr. Staub for the technology update.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Dr. Ben, I'm going to need you to not share your screen because it's not allowing me without, only one person can share at a time. Thank you. Okay, just making sure everybody can see my screen. We're upgrading technology tonight and doing some screen sharing. Everybody can see it okay?
Looks good.
Okay, so I wanted to kick off the night tonight by celebrating Teacher Appreciation Week and thanking the teachers and all of the workers in the Boyerton Area School District for all of their hard work and efforts. Much of our presentation tonight will really be about celebrating and showing what hard work has happened over the past 6 to 8 weeks. It's been a crazy amount of time, and as we move forward, you know, our theme is there's no I in team, and we're all working collaboratively to come together to help support the challenges that we have. I didn't see Bob Iannelli hop on, so if Bob did not hop on, I will take the next couple slides. Is Bob there? Okay, so the first couple slides are some housekeeping items that we want to try to move forward to ultimately get a thumbs up for our next voting meeting. And they are with respect to copier renewal and iPad purchases. This information was given in the board packet last week. And I will utilize my knowledge behind the scenes a little bit, but don't necessarily have the complete expertise. But for those of you that know, we have a copy center within our district that allows us to be much more efficient in processing our copy distribution for our students. And as of June 30th, our current copy machine lease expires. So Mr. Iannelli and his team have gone out and explored getting different quotes for our continuation, or I should say a new lease moving forward. And ultimately, the decision was made to go with one specific company. If you look at the bottom of our slide, we had initially budgeted $90,000 for this lease, which was what our global perspective was of how we were looking at how much this would cost over the term of the lease. The lease that we decided to move forward with came in at $79,263. One thing that's really exciting about this particular lease, if you look about a third of the way down, the new lease agreement will include all consumables, including toner, parts, maintenance, and stables for the duration of this 5 years. So we wanted to, you know, capitalize on having all of that being included in our lease. So there really should not be any other soft costs that come along with the lease itself. So we are looking to also move to a digital submission for our copies from our teachers, which would allow us the opportunity to have teachers electronically submit their copies requests to our copy center. And in that process, they also would be able to check on the queue and know what the copy status is. So by upgrading this whole process and the efficiency of our copy machines in general, it should allow our print shop to be much more effective in process. The second item that we would like to move forward for a vote is purchasing 177 iPads. We're looking to, as we move forward with technology support within our district, to have as close to a 1-to-1 student to device ratio. Currently in our K through 2 grades, for the most part, we have a combination of iPads and laptops.
I'm on, Mike, sorry.
That's okay. In grades 3 through 5, we have our use of laptops. So as we move forward with this purchase, by purchasing 177 iPads in kindergarten, we would be a 1-to-2 ratio, which would be for every 2 students, there would be 1 iPad, which would allow kindergartens to be, half using a device at the same time. For those of you that have been in a kindergarten classroom, having everybody on an iPad at the same time would be a little bit difficult to manage. And then in grades 1 and 2, we would be pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio for iPads. And then in grades 3 through basically 12, we would then be 1-to-1 across the district. So this is really a repurposing of some of our laptops that we have in the primary level, and then also a purchase of iPads so that we can supplement our primary classrooms for this purpose. We did have money put away in our tech reserve fund for the 2020-2021 school year, and the cost of $52,073 allows us the opportunity for this upgrade to continue that ratio. So I will look to Mr. Ionelli now that he's on if there's anything he'd like to add, but ultimately we're looking for approval to move both the copy renewal and the iPad purchase items for a future board agenda approval.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Sorry I'm late. A couple of technical issues. But just to kind of go off with what Mr. Stout said, we have some challenges in the elementary levels where kindergarten through 2nd grade are using laptops, Windows laptops, and there's some struggles and there's some challenges with using those devices at that age. And it's preferably, it's easier to use and more grade level beneficial to go with the iPad for those grades. So this was something we tried to plan for the last 2 years, and using what we currently have in the inventory throughout the district, which kind of repurpose those devices.
So basically, Madam Chair, we are looking for a potential, well, the next slide actually has any questions. First of all, if there's any questions with respect to these 2 items, and then we're looking for just a thumbs up to potentially move them forward.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding these 2 items?
My hand's up.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Hemingway.
The question is, how do we staff this copy room? Or is it staffed by full-time employees, or the students participate, or how's that work?
Currently, there's 1 full-time employee and there's 1 part-time employee. The part-time employee comes in around 2 in the afternoon and works. They work 40 hours a week, but they're not a full-time employee. They work. I'm not sure what their category is, but we have 2 people on staff, again, 10 to 2, and then a full-time from 7 to 3:30. Just 2 individuals run this department.
Have we explored maybe outsourcing some of the local print shops, if that would be an option, or is that sort of out of the realm?
We've looked at that very minorly. We pull about 1.7 million copies a month. And the paper that's generated and the print is probably one of the largest in the, I'm gonna say one of the largest in the state. With these new machines, the efficiency that's built into this will allow, if you will, a different perspective on how to get these printed with less people. So right now, these 2 individuals, there's a lot of manual processes in place to carry the paper, to copy the paper, to put it in the copier and scan it. And with the software that's included with this gives us the opportunity to basically do more from our seat at our desk to make things more, an automatic process, approval process, and can still keep things in-house. So we feel that this would be still beneficial to keep this process in place and in-house at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
It looks like Ms. Nyman has a question.
Yes, with everything that's going on with this COVID-19, do we actually think any of this right now is something we should be moving forward with? Or we should wait and find out what's going to happen with our schools?
Yeah, let me address that one, Mr. Ainelli. With respect to the copy lease, that is something that we are going to have to make a decision on because the copy lease has expired. As we move forward and with the unknowns moving into next year if we're back brick and mortar, obviously the devices will be utilized in the classroom. If we're not able to go back brick and mortar, I know it was a challenge this year for us not to get devices out to our elementary school students or not to our global population of elementary school students. One of the issues that went along with that is the ability for us to not have one-to-one devices for students, so we weren't able to even distribute that way. As we would move forward, if the governor would not allow us the opportunity to come back to a brick and mortar environment, and we would have to do continue virtual or some sort of hybrid that's a combination, these devices would allow us to have the ability to have more devices pushed out to students. So I completely hear what you're saying, Mrs. Nyman, and it sounds, is this the best time? But for the reality that we have the money budgeted already, it could be the opportune time to support our kids from a virtual perspective if needed. And if we're back brick and mortar, we can support that as well.
My hand up.
Go ahead, Mrs. Deeroff.
You said the contract's expired. I thought it expired June 30th. But regardless, are we going to start a new contract already July 1st?
Yes, ma'am.
And we're going to be using this all summer long, these big machines?
Yes, we will. Like Mr. Stout alluded to earlier, so if we do go back to brick and mortar, there is a ton of printing that needs to be done for the upcoming school year. And if not, there will be a ton of packages that need to be printed to go home for the students to support them virtually. So there will be some printing.
And we did check, are we using the same firms for the new contract as we did for the old one?
Well, we compared 3 vendors, all of which are co-stars. And right now, as we currently sit, we're getting down to narrow to 2. One is our current vendor and one is a new vendor that we picked last time for our 96 equally dispersed copiers throughout the district. So there's the 2 vendors we have it narrowed down to. Price that Mr. Stout gave you was the worst case scenario.
Well, which vendor are you thinking of going with?
I'm thinking about going with the same vendor we use now, which would be Marco Solutions. The machines that we're getting are, these are built for production printing, not necessarily, the ones we have now are not rated for what we're currently printing, the amount of volume that we're printing. They do the job, but they do take a beating. The ones we're looking at are more equally built for what the kind of printing we're doing. They're considered hard metal or heavy metal, where the existing stuff is considered soft plastic,
and yet
fast plastic.
And yet they're cheaper.
Not much. We're talking very minimal amount of cost, and for the better machines, the value is there for the very little bit of difference between these machines.
And these are the vendors that wouldn't give us any kind of discount because we had to shut the school down right away.
Well, that's correct. But these vendors are the salesmen. Once we select a vendor, we start dealing with the financial piece, which is more like a bank. So something similar you would get with a car lease, where they wouldn't allow us to reduce our printing. We reduce very minimally, so they wouldn't give us a non-payment because the contract was coming up to the end. So no, ma'am.
Okay, nobody expected this to happen. No. I realize that. But can we put something in our leases when we're doing this kind of thing, that if the state, it's mandatory to close our school, that we get some kind of relief from these people?
Well, I would say that, when we get the contract, we can ask the solicitor to review that and see if that's something that makes sense. We can sure ask for that, absolutely.
Well, it makes sense to me. If we can save money, we're paying all this stuff, and and we're not getting anything for it, or not as much as we should anyway.
Well,
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We're still doing some printing, nowhere near as what we were, but the
Right,
machines
that's what
are
I
still
said.
being used. And I can see your point. I look at it more like an automobile lease. These banks are not as friendly as you would think they are for this kind of purpose, but absolutely we can mention that in the new lease and see if the solicitor wants to throw that in there and see how that works. I mean, I'm not a legal person by any means, but we can sure try that.
Well, I would appreciate it, because even my insurance company said to me, you're not driving as much, so we're going to give you a discount on your car insurance.
Yes, and mine as well.
Thank you.
I
Yes,
did
ma'am.
too.
Mrs. McWhorter has a question?
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to let Mrs. Deerolf know that when she raises her hand, it's not showing up on the panel. So
I'm lucky I can get into Zoom, ma'am.
I get that. So yeah, definitely keep piping in when you want to speak.
I will. Thank you
Yep,
for your permission.
not needed.
Ms. Nyman, do you have another comment? Your hand is still up.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess we can, is anyone opposed to moving this forward? Okay, hearing no opposition, we can move it forward to our voting meeting in May.
Thank you, school board,
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Mr. Ainelli.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, Mr. Stout, you're going to present the continuity of planned instruction update?
Absolutely. I'm gonna go through this, but I'm going to put in some video footage as far as the presentation itself. And the first thing I'd like to do is kick it off with a song. So I wanted to kick off our meeting. I know there were some questions by some board members about, what does continuity of education look like? How are we supporting our children? And the music department shared that with me today for the purpose of the presentation for tonight. So I thought that was a great kickoff to show how we are still maintaining the integrity of our programs through this COVID-19 pandemic. Like I said, I'm going to go through slides relatively quickly because there's a lot of information here. If you have any specific questions, I'll ask that maybe you wait till the end and then I can go back and recoup the information along the way. Some of this information you saw before. We went through and talked about how on March 12th we had a 90-minute warning for our schools to close, and because we were halfway in Montgomery County, we were in the first line of schools that were on shutdown. We were given initial instructional guidelines with respect to what our continuity of education plan would look like. Initially, it was not mandated instruction. It was a review of instruction and supporting our students along the way. One thing that we decided very early on, which was a great decision for our district, is we coordinated with the IXL platform, and the IXL platform allowed us to have support for our students in English language arts, math, K through 12, science and social studies 2 through 8, and Spanish. And to date, I'm going to just do a quick link here so you can see the information and what IXL platform actually looks like. So because I am a district administrator on the account, again, very exciting information. Our students in the Boyertown Area School District have answered over 5.5 million questions since the time that we started this platform. We have spent over 40,000 hours on IXL as far as supporting kids. And if you can see the ticker here, kids are working on it as we speak. So you can actually see the real time. You have the ability to go into our different buildings and look at all the information and how our kids are actually achieving, working through the platform. Again, another celebration of the hard work that we've been doing. We initially set up a voluntary website of instruction for our students. And again, it was not mandatory instruction, but we and the Office of Teaching and Learning work collaboratively to set this information up for our students to move forward. We initially found out that our schools would be closed through April 13th, which turned out to be right around that spring break. So we made the decision based upon not knowing what our statuses were, that regardless of our status at that particular time, we were going to start providing planned instruction for our students, whether or not we were going to do them virtually or whether or not we were going to continue or going back to brick and mortar. Again, this information is posted in board docs, so I'm not going to necessarily regurgitate and read this, but here's the definition of what continuity of education, COE, is. That was a new term through this whole process. So we developed a continuity of education plan that the Office of Teaching and Learning collaboratively worked on to submit to the state. Planned instruction, I made reference to earlier. This is the actual planned instruction that we would be asking our students to do throughout this whole process. And also another key element of this is enrichment and review, and looking at how are we supporting our kids to move forward, and how are we also helping to support and remediate skills that we want our students to have. Early on, we had the options during an extended closure. If we wanted to move towards continuity of education, towards planned instruction, or if we wanted to go with no instruction and just kind of leave it as enrichment and review activities. Obviously, the Boyertown Area School District moved towards a movement towards planned instruction. These were areas that we needed to consider in moving through planned instruction: was access to technologies for our students, all of the needs of our instructional learners, students receiving special education services, accommodations, and supports, students who are English language learners, and also those who are gifted. A huge endeavor, and very early on in this process, was to look at our technology that we have within the district. And I believe Mrs. Nyman had asked the question about the iPads. Well, our high school students have the ability to take their laptops home. So for the most part, all of our high school students have their devices at home, so it wasn't necessarily a concern. But our middle school students, in the past, it was determined that our middle school students would keep their devices in school. So very early on in this process, we work collaboratively, and big shout out goes to the technology department and all the hard work that they helped to support this process, as well as our custodians. They were out there helping to distribute laptops in this process. Understand that to get the laptops out of the classroom, they had to be unplugged. Plugs had to be taken out of these really cool storage devices in the classrooms. They had to be disinfected. They had to be cleaned, and they had to be they had to be brought together with the student names, because at the middle school level, if Mike Stout has a laptop, Mike Stout had to get that particular laptop. I just couldn't get any laptop, so they had to be categorized. That's the word that I was trying to say earlier. Had to be categorized so that each student had their individually assigned device. So between Middle School East and Middle School West, we had over 1,000 laptops were deployed to families. At the elementary school level, back to the earlier point that we had made, we did not or do not have enough devices to be one-to-one at the elementary school level with all of our current supports. So in collaboration with the special education department, Mrs. Torsha, we determined to try to get students that have IEPs and are in special education, get them the ability to get devices distributed to them for opportunities for access. And like it says at the bottom of the slide, it was awesome teamwork and a great collaboration of efforts. So one of the big things that the district had to take is moving from a brick and mortar platform to a virtual platform basically overnight. So if you think about it, well, how do you coordinate the efforts of over 500 teachers at one time to have this happen? Well, I'll tell you, use Zoom. And Zoom has become everyone's best friend in this process. But one of the awesome scenarios, and these are just hyperlinks with respect to Zoom sessions that we set up, and Dr. Bedden can speak to this as well. We had the ability to Zoom hop on our planning day, which was super exciting. So each one of these sessions was created for people to collaborate and have conversations about instruction. So I just wanted to show you what the coordination of this looked like. So if I wanted to go to grade 1, Mrs. Mason, Pine Forge principal, was the facilitator of that meeting. I clicked on this link and I was in her grade 1 meeting and we could collaborate together. So again, a really cool process in this scenario. We had our professional learning day very early on to help to support our teachers through what virtual learning would look like. Here you can look at, this was on March 30th, which seems like so long ago, but it was just a month ago. But we created a presentation for our teachers so that everyone had the same framework of what virtual education would look like. Zoom etiquette, all the way down to instructional practices. So as you can see, we taught the new terms to our teachers as far as continuity of education, enrichment and review, and so on. But it actually gave all the background to what our expectations were for our students. And finally, another big piece that's just an ongoing piece, which is really a celebration. And I know Berks County Intermediate Unit isn't necessarily probably watching this Zoom session, but the Berks County Intermediate Unit has provided a lot of resources to help support districts within the Berks County area for sessions that are synchronistic, which means that I can click on it and I'm live with someone. And they also record scenarios where you can go back and review. But we also, within our own district, created opportunities for our coaches within the district, which have been completely, is so important in this process to help build capacity in our teachers to help them learn virtually. So we have ongoing professional opportunities for our teachers so that they can, best utilize their tools for support for their students. Just so you know, we didn't just pull instruction out of the air about what to look like. We had different phases that we asked our teachers to do. For instance, here's an example of a phase 2. I'll click on that. We had to determine on March 12th, when our school year ended, brick and mortar, we had to determine where were our kids and what were we expecting them. So here's an example of, I believe this is 5th grade. It was determined where the teachers on those collaboration days determined where they left off with their students. And where they left off with their students was very critical to help support where those next 8 weeks of instruction would take place. So we asked our teachers to really focus on 8 weeks. And for lack of a different scenario, we asked for 8 essential skills. What are 8 essential skills that we want our kids to walk away with before the school year ends? So this is an example of some of the work that happened with one of our grade levels. I'll give you a pre-K, phase 1. Pre-K students are working very hard. You're going to see an opportunity to experience some of our pre-K work shortly. But a pre-K, let me move it up here. This was our pre-K teachers really looking at what are the specific skills. Here's the standard. Here are the critical skills and concepts. And here's the sequence of what they wanted those students to know during the course of those 8 weeks. So
Can you
during
make it bigger,
yes,
please?
I absolutely can. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
getting old. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. So again, pre-K, we had our standards, we had our critical skills and concepts, and we had our sequence of what we were asking our students to do during that time. And again, this goes back to our planning sessions that we had our teachers do during those professional virtual learning days. And I'll just go into a secondary example. Super exciting here. What we did is we put all of our secondary experiences in one spot. So if I want to click on seeing what 11th grade ELA academic, I can click on the link here and it'll take me to that specific area. If I want to go into grade 8 science, I can click on this doc and it shows all the work and the expectations that our science teachers have in grade 8 and so on. So this is a one-stop shop for all of our, and Mrs. Dura, I will zoom this up for you so you see it a little clearer maybe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Even, you know, advanced ceramics or arts, all of the work that took place from our teachers to help coordinate what instruction was going to look like during the course of this time. The teacher and student overview, this was a little chart that we put together March 30th through April 3rd about what the expectations were. April 6th through April 9th, and then April 13th and on. And again, I go back to focus on that April 13th date because that's when we really focused on planned instruction for all of our students. We created, because the new continuity of education was a term that the state created for this purpose. And like I shared with you before, we created a continuity of education plan that got submitted to the state. So we created a website for this to take place. This is an overview on the Boyertown Area School District for continuity of education information. Again, I'd like to put a shout out to Allison Moyer. She is the website queen, and I would talk to her and say, this is the vision of what we want to do, and she was able to put things together to allow us to have a one-stop shop for our stakeholders in the district to go to. So back on March 24th, we had a very important letter that was sent out from Dr. Bedden. And then we also had on April 8th, we had specific letters that were purposefully sent out at the same time through all of our levels. And then on April 14th was the day after our continuity of education planned instruction place took over. And we had this as a link to our letter that went home to our families. We also have our back on April 7th, if you remember, we presented to you as a board about where we were back then, which is a month ago, which is really crazy to think about how time flies. And we also had our continuity of education plan document and a slideshow that goes with it. So just so you can see, this is an example of what we submitted to the state. So I'm not going to go through it, but it's 12 pages long. So this is what we had to actually submit to the state for the purposes of proving that the Boyertown Area School District is submitting to the state. Here is a direct link to the continuity of education plan draft that you just saw. It was determined that schools were going to be brick and mortar closed for the duration of the school year, and that on April 13th, we'd be moving ahead with this planned instruction. So one really celebration is as we went to that planned instruction process, our voluntary virtual website turned into a BASD planned instruction basically overnight. And again, shout out to the members of the Office of Teaching and Learning. Sarah Barrow, Jen Joyce, and Ron Wales. But here is, and this is on the Boyertown area website, so everybody has access to it. And it also is a reference point for our families. But it goes through and talks about FERPA, COPA with utilizing Zoom. But what is awesome here is, for instance, you have every building's one-stop shop links to have their students go to the resources that they need to help support moving forward with instruction. So all of our elementary schools are here. All of our middle schools are here. And then also all of our senior high areas are here. So if I want to go into, if I want to go into our electives at the senior high, I click on this link and waiting patiently. It shows you, like before, where we had the areas for our students to, for our teachers to have their one-stop shop area for planning. This is the actual area that you would go to for instructional purposes. So each one of them, if I want to go into Mr. Cherkasky's periods and look at the work and the support that he's providing to his students during this time, I have the ability to click on those links and see that. So again, what is really nice about this is every area within our district has this one-stop shop to be able to go there. I know that, you know, some questions came up about copies and some of these scenarios about our copy machines. I can tell you that one of the really critical areas that we really thought about is our kids that don't have access to technology or to connectivity. So a huge shout out goes to the Office of Teaching and Learning, and we created take-home packets that we personally mailed to each family who did not respond to or responded to our teachers who reached out to them that said they did not have devices or they did not have connectivity. So we created a packet that was aligned with the standards that go along with the specific grade level, and pushing 500 packets were personally emailed to families to make sure that they had something to keep their students moving forward and you know, keeping learning in a positive direction. So I just jumped ahead of my presentation. That was the next slide, talked about getting packets out. To date, when I created the presentation a few days ago, really, we were at 470. I believe we've sent out a few more packets. Working remotely, a lot of people have questions about, you know, oh my gosh, like the school day is such that you have, you know, we come to school at the elementary school level at 8:25 and, you know, you're done at 3:25. Well, what we determined to do very early on is set expectations for our teachers as far as building into their schedule 30 to 60 minutes on a daily basis for professional learning, for them to build their craft of what virtual learning looks like. We set 30 to 60 minutes on a daily basis for them to plan instruction because this was all new for them to process. We also require our teachers to have up to 120 minutes or 2 hours per day. We recommended to as much possibility 1 time a week to offer evening hours, because we do know that we have our teachers that have families, they have their own circumstances at home that we don't know. So we wanted to make sure we were as flexible as we possibly could be, so that we could be you know, having our continuity of education be as clear as possible. K through 2 students are required to work 60 to 90 minutes a day or 5 to 7 hours per week. Grades 3 through 5, 2 hours per day or 10 hours a week. At our middle school and high school, we were looking at 3 hours a day or a total of 15 hours per week were the parameters of what we set for our students to be working on. Early on with our teachers, you know, it peaked, it went up and down until you kind of felt, because all of our kids are at different levels. But we also wanted to be very cognizant of the learning environment that they are at home isn't necessarily what they're accustomed to in the classroom. So we wanted to try to make sure that, you know, the social emotional needs of our students, families, teachers were all at the forefront for our students to make sure they could be successful. One big piece here that we determined was one of the questions came up from a board member last week's update about what are our students doing and what does this process look like. So we decided to compile some information here and look at our 5 C's: critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, and citizenship. Or character education, and try to collect anecdotes from our teachers about the kinds of activities that they have compiled. Ultimately, as we look at, cultivating an exceptional, innovative learning community that enables all students to succeed in a changing world. So the next so many slides, I could read them to you, but instead of reading them to you, and I feel like I've been talking now for over a half hour, I thought it might be better to show you another visual representation of the really hard work that our teachers, our custodians, our technology department, our food services, and most importantly, our students have done during the course of this weeks that we've been at home. So I'm going to share with you another video presentation that hopefully captures that work. So again, I could have read through all of these slides and articulated it, but it would not capture it without seeing it. So the last thing I wanted to really speak to with respect to an overview of our instructional continuity of education plan is really thinking about our instructional coaches and how important and how critical it is to have our coaches support this endeavor. This is really taking outside the box thinking to a whole nother level. So there is a plethora assortment of information here that our coaches have been on top of helping to support our learners to make our learning and support our learning as much as they possibly can to make it meaningful, relevant, and connected to where we want to move our students to. So a complete shout out goes to all of our employees, all of our coaches, all of our Boyertown community to help make this huge endeavor that really literally happened overnight, make it as successful as we possibly can. So I cannot thank everyone enough for keeping our people first and helping to, again, be as connected to our students and, you know, ultimately make virtual learning fun and to do the things that we would love to be doing in the classroom. But you know what? We're making the best of it. And I shot an email out to our staff last week, and I said, you know, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. Well, I feel like the Boyertown Area School District right now is in the midst of a lemonade factory. And we should probably be selling lemonade for fundraising because all of the hard work and efforts and what a great night to support what has taken place in Teacher Appreciation Week. So again, thank you to everyone. Any questions from any board members?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say you guys are doing a great job. You know, I've heard from teachers as well as students, and I'm really impressed with what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, my hand won't go up here, so I'll just have to butt in here. First of all, thank you. This is a big undertaking, and I congratulate you and your team on putting something this big together in such a short period of time. I absolutely do. My one question I have is, as we move into next year, where do we expect our students to be? That we expect them to be able to pick up right away into next year? Or are we going to be looking into some remedial, I guess, education to get them ready? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Brophy, you are asking a very loaded question there. And,
I understand. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And, you know, honestly, my team, and again, thank you for the kudos, but it really is a team effort with respect to everyone. So to answer your question is to really not answer your question. We really don't know what the status of coming back will be. I look at it as, you know, potentially 3 scenarios. We go back to brick and mortar and, you know, we pick up where we left off kind of scenario. We're hearing rumblings that, you know, with social distancing and number of kids in classrooms and different scenarios that maybe we can only send half of our kids back, like half the amount of time, and you have to have a rotation. So what does that look like? That to me is a hybrid model. Third scenario would be a continuation of where we are right now. Regardless of all of that, one critical element that we're going to have to really take into consideration is determining where our kids left off. If you look through that planning document that I shared with you earlier on, our first phase of this voluntary plan instruction really was to determine where our kids left off. If we are not able to get back to brick and mortar, we are going to have to really look at effective ways to assess where our kids are from a formative perspective to help determine where they're going to move forward. With that process is also going to require a lot of planning on our teachers' behalf, because if I'm a 4th grade teacher and I'm getting incoming 3rd graders, it could be a pretty strong possibility that I'm not going to be able to pick up right where 4th grade would have started. I'm going to have to go back and look at where 3rd graders might have been on, you know, April 15th or whatever that would be, and really modify my instructions. So the district is going to have to go through a lot of planning processes and modifying of curriculum to help support picking up that need. If I'm at a secondary level and I'm on a building concept such as math, where I'm looking at an algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, all those kinds of things, they're going to be faced with the same dilemmas. If I'm in a content-based scenario where I'm kind of working in a silo isolation scenario where it's very specific content, does something that they've missed in the previous year build capacity to help support this particular year, or can they pick up with just where they would be moving forward? But again, if you have an answer to all those questions, please, I will gladly Zoom with you for multiple days in a row to help support that. But just know, as a team, we are committed to helping support our students move forward wherever that is, because there's so many unknowns, and we're at the mercy of an ever our mission ever-changing world. Oh my gosh, like it's ever changing. I think every couple hours with respect to what we're being told.
And there's a reason I had to ask that question, and that's for everything you just said. I think the general public needs to know that you're looking at that, you understand the possibilities, and you guys are already planning for that. I think that's important for the general public to know and understand that we're not just moving forward and trying to claw our way through, that we're planning and we're looking out to how the kids' educational needs are going to be satisfied. And that's everything you just said there for me is perfect, because that shows to me, I believe you're really making the plans forward. One quick other question is, are we getting any feedback from parents and students as to how this is working?
That's a great question, Mr. Brophy. Let me just finish one other point to your initial point, was the fact that, we don't have equitable circumstances across our district to socioeconomic status and a lot of those pieces. So like our kids don't necessarily have the same opportunities. So we as a district have to do what we can to help to support them in that process. So I just needed to make sure I made that point along with the planning process, hence the almost 500 packets being emailed home. But to your point, ask the specific question again as far as
what are we eliciting or getting any feedback from parents and students as to how this is working for them and for the kids? So it's just so you guys know how it's going forward.
Absolutely. So literally, we had our secondary principals meeting this afternoon, and we have formed a subcommittee to create a survey to go home to our community to see and elicit feedback of how we're doing. We also want to put a survey out to our teachers with respect to the different kinds of resources that they've had access to, because I need to tell you another little secret behind all of this. I know there's been some frustration about not getting back into buildings and doing the kinds of things that we wish we were able to give people access to. Our teachers, as of March 13th, have not gotten back into buildings. So everything that they have created, everything that they have supported, everything that they are helping to move our students forward is not necessarily the resources that they have had access to in their classrooms, because we have not allowed them, back into their classrooms. So it has really been a daunting task in that process. But collecting feedback that was the next, tick on the agenda, and we hope to get feedback back, because I'm not necessarily a betting man, but as we move forward through the summer and going into next school year, I'm going to guess there's going to be some sort of modification onto our normal, although I'm not sure what normal is anymore, practices of our school system.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Mrs. Denon, then Mrs. Nyman, then Mr. Hemingway.
And I had my hand up.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Deeroff. Your hand's just not showing. Sorry, Mrs. Deeroff.
Nothing shows for me.
Mr. Stout, thank you so much. I guess it's Dr. Stout now, right?
Just Mr. Just Mr.
Just wanted to, thank you and thank all of the teachers. I know that I have been in touch with several people who have kids in school, and they have told me repeatedly, and I think I said at this last meeting, how great it has been, the teachers have been. Just a couple of questions. So I wonder how much of this is driven by the state as opposed to the local. I mean, I know the closing is driven by the state, but do you have a sense of any schools will have flexibility in terms of if there is a kind of fit hybrid model next year, if we could possibly like start later and then go later in the school year, so we don't have to do as much of the online stuff. Do you know how much flexibility we'll have?
Yeah, and those are great questions, Mrs. Denon, but we do not have answers to that. The process itself, the state, and Dr. Bedden certainly is one of the his network of people through the superintendency are typically the first to get information. In the early parts of this process, it was changing by the hour. So as we thought we had a plan in place, that was something that was going to happen. Next thing you know, the next day, Dr. Bedden comes back from BCIU, Dr. Hackman communication. Next thing you know, we're veering a little bit of a different direction. So the state itself has really given LEAs, which are us, flexibility in what that plan looks like. That's why across districts and neighboring districts, you don't necessarily see complete uniformity to what the continuity of education looks like. But we were given parameters of what it kind of needs to entail. So there has been no direction about what that looks like. Every day, I think I'm reading a new article about what these new parameters and again, like, a cafeteria at the senior high that has, hundreds of kids in it. Like, how does that even happen where we're reflecting on today? Like, those are all kinds of scenarios that are unknowns, and we are, mandated by the Department of Health and what the guidelines and regulations, and as we move towards the graduation conversation a little bit later on, the color coordinated, areas of, red, yellow, and green as we move forward, I'm going to guess we're going to get more direction as schools throughout the course of the summer to help guide what our decision-making process will be.
Mm-hmm. And one other question, you say 500 packets were emailed, but I'm assuming you mean mailed to the post office,
no,
right?
Mailed. Yeah, I'm talking.
Yeah, mailed. That's right.
Put
Okay.
in an envelope and mailed. Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I said emailed.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't have connectivity. Some students just, I would assume their parents or their IEPs or whatever, it was better for them to have the paper and pencil packets. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mrs. Denon, it really was. And for the most part, it was an elementary thing. The middle and high school level seemed to be, again, we were able to distribute laptops at the middle school level, and our high schoolers already had them. So it was a compilation of kids that don't have connectivity and a device, students with IEPs that could be more supported and more accommodated through a paper pencil means. Honestly, Mrs. Denon, like a family who had one device for 5 kids. So we tried to accommodate getting them, work. And to be totally truthful, like to get that work back from those students, we're still working on what that process might look like to retrieve that information and try to give them feedback, because that's a whole nother half of this that, based upon our social distancing and our parameters that are allowed to us, we have to be very careful with.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Nyman.
Mr. Stout,
Yes.
and I'm sure you're aware of it or whatever, but I'm sure all of our students are not learning at the same level. So that when we come back next year, whether it be brick and mortar or what we're doing right now, which it's scary, are the teachers going to be prepared to teach at different levels to a classroom? I mean, because we might have some that are advanced, some that are where they should be, and some that just haven't picked it up because of all of this going on.
Yeah, and Mrs. Nyman, that's a great question, and that is going to be something that we are going to have to put a lot of time and effort in. First of all, determining where our students are. As for those of you that have been around and have seen my presentations on assessment, we would call looking at formative assessments. What is informing us to help drive instruction as to where it needs to go? So what ability coming back to school do we have to formatively assess our students to determine where they are? And once we determine where our students are, what instructional practices are we going to put in place that are align with our standards to help move them forward. You are 100% correct that, to my example earlier, if I'm a fourth grade teacher and I've got third graders coming up to fourth grade, I am going to absolutely have to modify what my expectations might have been in previous years, because my kids are going to be missing some of those subsequent skills that they would have had in place. So it's going to be a lot of planning. It's going to be a lot of work for everybody to determine where that is. And back to the point, we're at the mercy of what the state's going to allow us to come back to do, whether or not we're able to come back to brick and mortar or whether we've got to do some other option as far as instruction goes.
Would it be possible now, and from talking to my daughter-in-law, she is doing some things with my two youngest ones, my two youngest grandchildren, that she's pushing them? Is there stuff out there that the parents can help to push their kids that's on the sites for our students?
Absolutely. We will be working on trying to, give recommendations to our families for, we talk about a summer slide as far as our kids go, but we want to not piggyback off of a very unique learning opportunity and then have our summer opportunity. We want to try to maintain as much as we can with our students. So we will push information out to our families to help support them in some capacity of whatever grade level they're in.
Ms. Nyman, to your question, some of that is already built in. For example, IXL actually does that. IXL does a diagnostic of the student's current status and actually lets the student work on the things that they are struggling in, but also it continues to progress in difficulty based on the student's performance. So it actually adjusts to the student's performance inside of the platform.
It self-adjusts?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, it modifies. It's like, you answer X amount of questions incorrectly, it starts to modify and adjust and takes you back to a level that, helps to support where your need is.
Okay, if you answer them all right, does it advance you then too?
Yep, it moves you forward. I can tell you, we have a member of our office who had one of their family members take the diagnostic assessment, and it really put their child at different levels based on the questions that were asked. So it was very diagnostic in nature, which was exciting for that particular individual to see.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hemingway?
First I'd like to say thank you for all your hard work. And I just have to say, I've actually enjoyed going through this process with my daughter. I've gone on virtual field trips. I've helped with learning viola lessons. I'm realizing I'm not smarter than a fifth grader, but I think the key component to all this is that the parents really need to be engaged. I know during some of the lessons, I obviously have a fifth grader, and she emotionally would go through periods that it was tough. So we need to support our kids and be engaged in their activities and make the best out of this. And so far, job well done. I'm very impressed with what Boyertown has done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hemingway. And I just need to, celebrate the supportive families out there. And one thing that we talk about as a team is we don't know what goes on in homes, like in our families. Like, are people impacted by the virus? Are people impacted with, job loss? Are people impacted? And what is the ability for our adults to help support our kids? And the mindset that, has been driven by, Dr. Bennett and our team is to really be as cognizant as we possibly can, to be, aware of, we don't know what's happening in homes, and some people might get all the support in the world and other people get the support when they're able to because their world has completely changed. So again, a celebration to everyone for their hard work and efforts.
And that approach was intended to be holistic, because we need to have the same lens and have tried to have the same lens with considering the workload of our teachers.
Right.
Many of our teachers have students at home too, so they're still being a parent to their own children, as well as some of them may have parents that they are caring for, or other family members. We know that we have had staff who have had a loss as a result of COVID-19 and those types of things. So we tried to design a plan that was considerate of our families, but also of our teachers and what they were going to be facing while trying to hold the line on trying to provide a good faith effort with the quality of instruction. We do know for a fact that it does not matter how talented you are as a student or how advanced you are or not, this will not be and has not been the same as if you were coming to school every day. There is a definite difference, and we know, to Mr. Brophy's question earlier, that there is going to be a significant amount of additional work in trying to figure out how to meet our students where they are, whatever school looks like next year. As the Secretary of Ed has already articulated, we really do not know. We may be going to school at 50% capacity every other day. For example, all kinds of models have been discussed depending on the status of where we are with the results of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Deeroff?
Okay, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank the team for such great work that was done, and much appreciated. What I was hoping to see or get to look at tonight was, like, what do I do? I'm a child, I'm coming into, I don't know, pick any grade, 3rd, 5th grade. I enter the classroom. I wanted to see exactly what happens. I've been hearing all kinds of things from different parents, and without, I'm a very visual person, and without having seen anything, and I still haven't, what their day consists of or what it's supposed to consist of. I mean, I'm told I can push this, push that, but I'm a child coming into my classroom, so to speak. How do I find that? Where do I get to see that? That's what I thought we were going to have, some type of demonstration.
Do
you know what I'm asking for?
I do, like actually
Okay.
going into a classroom. Mrs. Deeroff, last year when we did our board retreat, I actually invited all of the board members into, and there are many new board members, but I believe some are still here. I invited you into a Google Classroom when we were doing some of our work. And really what a Google Classroom is a place that warehouses information for kids to click on. I apologize. I showed all the links that were there and as many snapshots and whatnot of kids working, but each classroom has its own kind of unique flair to it. I can work on, giving you some sort of example maybe in a future meeting.
That would be great. I mean, just one, pick a class. I don't care what it is.
Okay.
But I'd just like to see what their day consists of.
Okay.
Not a generic Google Classroom, our classroom.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Mrs. McWhirter.
So yeah, I hope I can make this quick. So I have a 2-part question, and Mrs. Pitts will have to answer part of it. It's about the food anxiety and how many kids we're actually feeding, and then how are we identifying social emotional issues right now, and what are we doing about that?
I can speak to the social emotional issues. Part of the process with our continuity of education plan is really having our counselors be critical with respect to having office hours and being supportive of students. Our concern for the social emotional well-being of all of our students has not subsided in this whole process. So we still go through the same practices. If a teacher knows of specific situations that are happening with our kiddos that are of concern, counselors reach out, administrators reach out. We also embed social emotional learning into our instruction with respect to that allotment of time. We, from a district perspective, you have gotten some presentations on Mr. Tom Stecker, who has really, he kicked off our school year this year, which seems like so many days ago. But we are utilizing Tom Stecker's supports to help support some social emotional capacity in our teachers, which was our goal for this year, to help, again, move down the path to help support our students. So all of the supports that we have had in place for our students during the course of the school year are continuing, and as well as that prioritization on social emotional learning is still there for instructional practices as well.
Ms. McWhirter, we also created a dedicated section on our website specifically to support that aspect of our work. So there is a section on the website that we can share with you that pushes our resources to our parents and our teachers.
Mrs.
Excellent.
Porter.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Mrs. Torsia. I work directly with Miss Dr. Horton, who is our counselor coordinator, and I am in daily conversation with her with regards to families that are in need, and we are making sure that we are getting resources to them. If we feel that there is an unsafe situation, we will contact Safe to Say and have well checks go out. So we use our own resource. And I'm in constant contact with the places that are hospitalizing our children, our students who are having mental health problems. So I'm working with the counselors, special education department, nurses to make sure that any records that are needed in order to support those students in those acute or subacute placements, that they're getting directly what they need. We are also making on some occasion phone calls to children and youth, because there are things that are being observed or things that are coming back to us that we're just not comfortable with. So we are erring on the side of caution in every situation. So, and within special education, we have contracts with Creative Health for school-based counseling. Those people are in place and are conducting regular one-on-one counseling sessions with the students, and when it's appropriate, they are continuing to have group, again, being very mindful of who could be in the room so that no one is discussing personal problems or situations, but at least we're continuing to give them the tools and the mechanisms that they need to support, themselves in coping. So there is a plethora of work that we are doing behind the scenes in supporting the students, social and emotional. So sorry, I went on there a little bit.
Thank you so much.
And then Mrs. McWhirter, on the feeding program, and I will say the last time that I had an update was March 19th. But at that time, we were averaging 350 clients coming through. Now we have gone down to the 2 days per week, the Monday and the Thursday. I will say we started off with I think it was about 130 the very first few days. So it really has grown, but I can check with Mrs. Clinton to see if that number has changed significantly since mid-April.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, I'll put you in the queue. Mr. Foose and then Mr. Updegrove.
I'd like to echo the sentiments of some of my colleagues. This has been a really amazing undertaking by the staff, and really want to take an opportunity to thank all of our teachers and everybody involved. I see it daily with both my fourth grader and my kindergartner. The fourth grader navigates things pretty well, gets through this, that, and the other software that he has to get into. My younger one needs a little more assistance. But the one thing that I think I'm concerned about for all of our kids, and I don't know if you could just speak to how we might be looking at ways to address this, is their ability to actually interact with other students. Like, a lot of it is logging on, just completing tasks, which is great, and they enjoy that. But two brothers interacting with each other all day, every day for weeks on end. I think they might enjoy a little more interaction with their peers, and I don't know if there's a way to encourage more of that.
Right. And Mr. Foose, I know you're into wrestling, so I'm assuming they're capitalizing on their wrestling skills as brothers as well. But there's
a lot of uncoached moments going on.
I'm sure. And you know what? You're bringing up a very valid point. And honestly, as an almost 50-year-old adult here, I'm faced with the same issues. Like, how nerdy of it is it to me to look forward to having these conversations with all of you, because it's social interaction. You know, my wife is an administrator in another, you know, in the neighboring district, and we're having stereo conversations in our house. And, you know, I'm going to tell everybody, like, we had friends over the other day and maintained social distancing for the first time in like 7 weeks and felt guilty about it because they sat on a couch and we just wanted conversations. So we're having, Facebook, portal conversations with them, because it's an issue for all of us. And, how do we maintain those social interactions in a way that are authentic, and aren't really, reproduced in some way to make them happen. So I know our teachers in different capacities have worked in small groups and different things with kids, but talking to you through a TV screen right now is not the same, or computer screen is not the same conversation if you and I were in the boardroom together. So it's definitely a different world that we're in. And I agree, it's a concern. We're all getting used to it, but I'm not saying that's okay, because it's what we're forced to get used to. Those social interactions are critical for our well-being. I mean, Tom Stecker says, you're supposed to have, 6 or 8 human touches in the face of a day to maintain, normalcy as a human being. And, we're not allowed to, to reach out and shake with someone's hand right now. So it is an ongoing concern.
I guess to follow up on that, it was asked earlier about the fall, and there are so many unknowns about the fall. If we are in either a virtual or some type of mixed environment at that time, do you anticipate, and obviously this is subject to change, but do you anticipate that there would be more like log in to a classroom meeting for some part of the day, or would it be a lot like it is right now where it's kind of just completing tasks?
I would speculate it's probably going to be some similar and some not similar, depending on process. Because if we get direction, Dr. Bedden has had conversations with us that we need to have plan A, B, and C during the course of the summer to move into next school year. And as we think about those things, there will be more time to plan what some of that instruction is going to look like, more so than what we had with that 90-minute warning moving forward. But all I can say is we will do what we can to try to promote social interactions. But, when you're at a virtual experience and you can't be within 6 feet of one another without a mask on, it's really difficult to really, and kids, do they really understand what this is all about? And, they want, your boys want to wrestle with one another. They want to go up and play with the neighbors and do the kinds of things that kids love to do. But we have to teach them right now the reason why these things aren't happening, but yet be very careful to not put that fear out there that, takes away their childhood. So like, it's a very fine line, but moving forward into next year, we will do what we can to help support, first of all, meeting the needs of our kids, but secondly, making sure that we're helping, families and helping to do what we can.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just great knowing the way you guys are approaching this, and I really do think you guys are doing a great job. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Updegrove. You're on mute, Mr. Updegrove.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Mr. Stout, that was fantastic. You and your team did a great job. I'm really glad to have you on board. That's really grateful. And thank you. And be safe.
Thank you. And like I said, it is truly a team effort, and we have over 1,000 people involved in our district, and it's been just a massive undertaking, and I'm proud of everyone. But thank you. Mrs. Hoke, yeah.
I just did the same thing. Yeah. Are there any more board comments? I do see an attendee has their hand up. This is a time for board comment only. So I do have a final comment. I just wanted to say thank you to the Office of Teaching and Learning, to our administrators, to Mrs. Moyer, to all of our teachers, really to everyone who's been working so hard to keep education going and communication and the food distribution. You've all been doing a really amazing job, and I appreciate it. As a parent of children in the district, I really appreciate the thoughtful and considerate approach that Boyertown has taken to how we are continuing with the plan of education. I think they've really taken into consideration the weight of what we're asking of our students and of their parents, which I appreciate. And then I also wanted to just thank all parents, because I am a parent of a 2nd and a 7th grader, and my 7th grader is working fairly independently, my 2nd grader not so much. So it has been challenging at times. I've always appreciated teachers, but it's giving me an entirely new appreciation of them. But it has been difficult balancing all of my responsibilities of regular life with helping my 2nd grader really get through her work. So I'm sure it's that way for other parents, and I just want to say thank you. You're all doing a great job. I see a lot of comments about stress and whatnot, but I think you're all really fabulous. So having said that, I think we are ready to move on. Do you have anything else to say, Mr. Stout? We're ready.
I'm good. I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Bedden.
Okay.
Good evening again. This next portion of the meeting will move into the planning for the closeout for the senior high, and specifically the seniors, and a focus on the commencement exercise. First and foremost, as articulated by the Secretary of Education, students will be graduating. They have allowed us to do things to make sure that COVID-19 situations do not have an adverse impact upon students' ability to graduate. Secretary has also been very clear about us distinguishing the difference between a student graduating and what really they have consistently pushed out as commencement exercises. In Boyertown's case, commencement exercises are governed by Board Policy 217, and specifically it does delegate planning of graduation to the superintendent or designee, which in the case of Boyertown Area School District, the designee has always been the high school principal and the high school administrative team under the direction of the principal. The role of the superintendent has been to provide guidance, which in this case was for the high school team to develop a plan, given the status that we were facing with the pandemic and COVID-19, of trying to find an appropriate way to recognize our seniors within the directives given by the governor's declaration of a state of emergency, the Department of Health guidelines, and PDE guidelines regarding the safety and well-being of staff, students, and the community. It is a complete consideration of not only just the students and the community, but also our staff who are involved in the process. And as shared earlier, we have had staff that also have been adversely impacted by COVID-19. As the board is aware, the district was in the state transitioned to a red, yellow, green guideline by the governor. Each of us are licensed by the state and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, requiring us to adhere to all those directives that are provided from the governor, and also now those things that he has directed us to follow with the Department of Health. One particular thing that happened earlier in the year was a decision about the prom. That was made at a time when we were still having hope on conducting graduation ceremonies as previously planned, but clearly seeing that the time frame for making a decision about prom had to be made at that time. The school board, as you all know, was provided a copy in advance of the communication at my direction that was going to go out to parents. Then the intent was to provide parents with a copy of the plan, which we had hoped and expected to get feedback. This agenda item was already planned and communicated that it would be a part of the committee meeting discussion for the board to hear the planning, the thinking, the things that were considered by the high school administration in developing their plan that was sent out. Any and all communication that was received as possible considerations by myself was forwarded to the high school team for them to try to look into, which I think they will try to address some of those things at this time. Part of that expectation, as mentioned earlier, was that we had to adhere to the guidelines that were put out by the governor's office. At this point in time, as you are aware, the governor set out a target goal for reopening various parts of the Commonwealth that was set at having fewer than 500 new confirmed cases per 100 population reported by a particular jurisdiction within 14 days. Additionally, a decision-making matrix was given out by the governor and also discussed by all 18 county superintendents. That matrix, as you see on the screen, was developed with a red, yellow, green expectation. And specifically in red, which is the current status of Berks County, was to maintain a stay-at-home orders in place, no large gatherings allowed, and so on, that apply to public settings such as ourselves, and schools were to remain closed for in-person instruction. The biggest change moving to yellow is the allowing of gatherings, but no more than 25 people, and then looser status with the green status. We continue to monitor the status of Berks County, which we are based at, but of course we overlap into Montgomery County. The district is one of about 70 or so districts out of the 500 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that overlap 2 counties. Unique to us is that at 100 square miles, we actually have a larger population of students sitting on the Montgomery County side and most of our schools on the Berks County side. The latest data trying to monitor the per capita expectations to see our progress is that we have unfortunately continued to increase in the coronavirus impact in Berks County, meaning the blue line, and then also the red line being the number of deaths are reported. We are significantly farther away from the per capita guidelines that we were hoping to progress to be in a better situation than in. We are, in some cases, leading in the top numbers inside the state with issues related to the coronavirus. Just recently, we are, as it says, we're nearing 200 coronavirus deaths as the positive number of cases is now passing 3,000 within the state. In essence, we are escalating. We are about 718 number per 100,000 per capita number that they were looking at. At this time, as part of this agenda item, I'd ask the high school administration to share their plans and to share with the board and the community how they came about arriving at those plans, and also the adjustments that they were considering making based on feedback that they have received. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Dr. Foley and his team to share the proposal that they had developed and also any modifications that they have considered making.
Dr. Ben, can you give me the screen share again?
Let me see if I like you enough to do that. Let me go back to.
I think we're good.
You got it?
Can everyone see it?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
You can go to the next slide. So thanks for letting me speak to you this evening and kind of talk through this whole process to kind of give you some idea, a little bit of background of the things that our team has really been looking at. As Dr. Bedden has suggested, there have been several suggestions that have come to us from either himself, through the board, through community members, of which we did our best to track down and kind of see if those were real possibilities for us. And I'm going to say this to keep in mind that we also are a very large school. with over 500 kids in this class, it's something that is also that we have to make sure that our venue can handle that. Typically, when we're at Santander, we have about 55 to 6,500 people to come and watch the graduation. And just so you understand, this is our smallest class that we've had in a while, and the smallest class we're going to have for the foreseeable future here. But just keep that in mind as we talk through some of these things. So one of the things we talked about was shared with us was the possibility of a drive-in movie theater. So we scanned the area, and there is Becky's, which is in Walnutport. It's about an hour and 15 minutes north of here. And we did pursue that, and we're in conversations with the owners. The first thing that they said to us was, number one, is this, how big is your class? And of course, we're over 500, and their screen will see that we'll actually have about 480 cars. So with any kind of social distancing, any space at all between a car, they're estimating that we could get about 350 cars in there. But the most important thing that they said is if you get permission from the state to allow us to do that, we will do that. So again, it was going to come back, are we going to be allowed to get permission from the state to be able to do this in a large venue, a large gathering setting? A couple other avenues and things that, that we really went down and looked at from other suggestions we had. There was one suggestion about a racetrack. Obviously, we don't have a racetrack that's relatively close other than we have Grandview up on the hill here, but I'm not sure that would be able to house 500 students and cars and all that stuff. I'm not sure if anybody's been to that racetrack. It's a fun little track, but it just would not meet our needs. There were some other suggestions about maybe the Coventry Mall. Again, that's a business that's closed, and the comments there are if we can get permission from the state to allow them to allow us, again, to have a large gathering, then, that could be a consideration. But based upon the information that Dr. Bedden has shared with you, we're not getting permission for a large gathering. A couple other things that were suggested and we looked at was maybe a parade or a promenade that maybe started somewhere at the Ed Center or Colebrookdale area, drive through and then come through the school and maybe have some kind of a stage or something set up where students would be allowed to come out and possibly get a diploma or something there. I spent some quality time with Chief Leatherman, and we did kind of discuss the possibilities if this was even a reality for us. Again, based upon the roads that we would have to even drive on, we'd have to get permission from PennDOT, because any kind of a state road, you have to have permission from them to do any kind of parade or type of a promenade on. The second one was then we'd have to get permission from Colebrookdale, Boyertown, and then Boyertown Borough, just in our little area here to be able to get all of those pieces to happen. The other thing is Chief reminded me too that based upon the stay-at-home order and the non-gathering, people would not be allowed to stand along the road to watch this anyway because of the non-gathering rules. So there are other areas and things that we've really tried to look at, and we've gone down several rabbit holes to try to get something to happen, including even looking at something in our own auditorium that would allow us to, in a time frame, maybe space kids out, in a time frame where they would come in, walk across the stage. Unfortunately, as it is right now, they'd have to be in mask and gloves. So based upon that, working with our TV crew, we decided that you wouldn't be able to identify the students if they were doing that anyway, because in order to follow the guidelines, they would still have masks and gloves, and it would be hard to detect any students at that point. Couple of things that we have done, obviously we're working with the foundation to help us maybe get signs out to some of our students, as well as one of the things that we did not advertise because we didn't want to have people come there and then us not be able to promote it at that point is we did a thing with the stadium where we had the 2020 on the scoreboard, and we did a couple drone shots and did some of that, just doing little pieces along the way to try to continue to honor our graduates. You can go to the next slide. The interesting part for me is I've been doing this for a long time. Yes, I'm old, but I've been doing this a long time, and for 31 years, and my wife still teases me because I've been to 31 graduations and I'm still in high school. But the point is, this was heart-wrenching. This is one of the most things that I love about high school is because this is the point where kids, after all that work that they've done to this point, have been able to move to the next phase. This is kind of like that rite of passage. And it's heart-wrenching to understand that it may not be in the traditional way that has been done in the past, or our hopes in the future. So, you know, we want to do everything we can to, you know, honor our students. And how do we do that? But how do we do that that's also inclusive, but also is in a health and safe manner that all of our families can really enjoy, not only now, but also in the future. You can go to the next slide. So based upon the data that Dr. Bedden had shared with us and some of the things that, you know, I've been watching this, I've been watching the Johns Hopkins sites, and I've really been tracking this for a long time, because obviously my hope is that we would be able to go to our Santander graduation on June the 4th. That, to me, that is still the thing I would love to happen. But based upon what's happening around us, and trying to be realistic, I'm just not sure that with the COVID-19 cases that are continuing to climb in our area, in particular Berks County, as long as the stay-home orders are in place and those large gatherings are prohibited, you know, and travel is really limited to just sustaining life and those things, then it's kind of slowing the process down for us. So we're going to go to the next slide. So our hope was that, you know, by June 2nd, some miracle would happen and that we would get at least to, you know, the yellow, or to a point where we could go to something different. But even by June 2nd, we'd have to be into a green before we could actually take advantage of the Santander Arena. Right now, the Santander Arena is closed. All of their employees are furloughed. I am in regular contact with them just to try to figure out what is going on with them and when they're going to be allowed to reopen. And if you looked at the grids, you can even see when you get even into the yellow section that all of the large arenas, casinos, theaters, any kind of entertainment places like that are still closed. So we would have to get all the way into green before we would be allowed to take advantage of the Santander Arena. Last week, early last week, one of the things that happened was the governor, as well as Secretary of Department of Health, Dr. Levine, did make an announcement based upon school buildings being closed for the remainder of the school year. And also the thing is that they really have, that's kind of when we really started putting other things into gear, because that's when they said graduations are just going to have to be remote. And they don't foresee schools being allowed to have large gatherings to do a traditional type of a graduation. So as we go through this process, you know, we were trying to figure out what can we still do to honor our students. You can go to the next slide. So based upon all those things, again, the ultimate goal would be that Santander Arena on June the 4th. However, we'd have to figure that out and be in green by June the 2nd, and then they would have to be able to get their employees back employed and get things up and running in Santander. So one of the things we were trying to figure out, what is the best way that we could have the inclusive graduation for, and I'm going to use the term inclusive here, is because we want to include every person. Because even in the cars and the parades and things like that, we have a lot of students that do not have transportation. And what's the best way I can help them be inclusive in this whole process? And again, that's going to be the virtual commencement ceremony. So kind of our plan to move forward with the virtual commencement ceremony, we're still planning on having it produced and ready to go for June the 4th. But we do have additional plans that are going to be in place as well. But the thing that I know that we could do to honor our kids would be to have this ready to go. I know a lot of the surrounding schools have all given different optional dates and things like that. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, and some of the things they're doing, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to be able to do that based upon the rules that are put in places for schools. But I didn't want to be left out there with nothing to honor our students, where this way I know we can at least honor our students and still have plans to move forward in other areas as well. You can go next slide. So one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that we take our student portraits, and I'm going to be working with our TV studio, and we're going to produce a virtual graduation where the student's senior picture is going to be displayed along with their name. And we've also, working with our class officers, sent out a form for them to fill out, so they can have up to 150 characters if they choose to put something that's school appropriate, so that when we have their picture being displayed, they can also have a message there. And as we go through this, as far as their awards and things like that, we're going to get as many of those as published at this time as we possibly can. But I'll be working with Mrs. Moyer also to have something a little bit separate going on for just the particular senior awards. But also in the process of doing this, then our families can watch this. We have the YouTube channel. We have also our educational access, the Bear Visions. We have Comcast channel 969, the FiOS channels, and Service Electric as well channels that we all broadcast currently on anyway. And our BASH YouTube channel obviously is going to be something there. I'm not exactly sure if I can make it play through Facebook, but we're going to try. I don't know the rules on that yet, but we're going to try to make that happen as well, so that this whole virtual thing can be played. I know some of the local schools have talked about this drive-in movie type theater, which is basically doing a virtual graduation. They're just going to try to project it in a large group on a screen. So again, that's going to be a large group gathering. So I'm a little concerned there. You can go to the next slide. So part of the process to make this happen, obviously, we need to get the caps and gowns to all of our students. So we've created a chart and a schedule where we're going to have our senior students by a very select time schedule, of which they're going to be coming by the week of May the 18th through May the 22nd in an organized fashion. And during that time, what we're going to do is be able to collect all the materials from them, and then also give them their caps and gowns and the diploma covers and all the things that they're going to need for graduation. Just so you understand, students are not allowed out of the car, that no one's going to be in the building. All this is done on the exterior part of the building in a fashion, and we'll show you that slide in just a little bit of what that looks like as the kids drive around. We do also understand that there are still students, for example, taking AP exams as well as the CE and DE courses. So during that week of May the 22nd, we understand that there's going to be testing and stuff going on. So we do have late hours on a couple of those nights, so that we want the kids to obviously finish their concurrent enrollment college courses as well as their AP exams before they turn anything in. So we've got that schedule worked out with them as well. During this time, we'll also, now that the students have their caps and gowns, we're going to have our student speakers to come in. We're going to be able to record them. Our goal at this point is to, with social distancing and permission, to record one student at a time in front of the school. You can kind of see my background there. We kind of like to have maybe that as the backdrop, but have them being recorded for their speeches as well as all their talking points. Again, we talked with the class officers to send out that form so that students would have an opportunity to import a text so that we can incorporate that into the show, as well as after the caps and gowns are going to be distributed, we'd like to have the students to send in a school appropriate, tasteful, small video clip that we would add on to the end of the formal ceremony. So the virtual formal ceremony will be just the ceremony. So we'll start off, and you had an opportunity to see the national anthem by our students in a Zoom. We're working on the alma mater. We're working on the class song in a very similar fashion, putting all this together, going through all the student speakers, introducing our valedictorian and salutatorian, and having all those pieces in place, running through the whole process of calling out the names while those pictures are being posted. And then, of course, at the very end, once the ceremony is done, we will have those video clips that we want for the students to be attached on the end of that. So in order for students to do that, after they get their caps and gowns, they'll have until May the 25th to send those video clips in. But again, that'll be sent out through our student or student government, or our class officers sending that out to our students. You can go to the next slide. I think we covered all that. The way we're going to have students enter was going to be on the Monroe Street side of the building, where 4th Street and Monroe Street is. Follow that in a clockwise pattern all the way back around and right back out to 4th Street. So the way we have it laid up and set out, again, I talked with the police so that they understand. I talked with Chief Leatherman, and he understands that we're going to be doing those on these days. I don't foresee a backlog just because we have the students spaced out in time sections. So we're going to hope our students will follow the time sections as given to them. Obviously, we do have some extra cush time built in, and we have also late evening hours on 2 of those nights, so that we can make sure that we can accommodate all students. You can go to the next slide. So from the aerial view, you can see if we started up there where Station 1 is, so where Monroe Street and 4th Street is, we would come in, go through the long parking lot in the front where the bus is, the bus loop there. And we go to Station 1, 2, 3, all the way around to 6B and then back out. And each one of those stations are designated for spots for student drop-off items as well as student pickup items. So for example, at Station 4, we will have students being able to drop off athletic equipment, but it's also at that same station, we'll have students be able to receive their instruments and things they had that were left in school, because again, no one's been allowed in school. We're going to be working with our custodial staff, and they have been troopers through this whole process. They've been amazing to help us gather these materials, because again, students, and we don't want people in the building because it's already been sanitized, and they're going to be following those tracks and then re-sanitizing those areas as we continue to move through this process. And the last station you can see here would be the 6B. That's where they're actually going to get their cap and gown and anything else that was left over in there, so that they can be ready for their hopefully their video clip that they're going to be sending in for us. You want to go and go to the next one? So based upon that, May the 15th will be the last academic day for our seniors. Again, we understand that those students that are going to be taking AP and CE courses will be extended through the 22nd, because we understand that they have those tests and that those are extremely important and they need to do that. The senior award winners are going to be announced May the 28th. We're going to do that through social media with a scrolling kind of a slide process. I'll be working with Mrs. Allison Moyer to help me with that as well, so that we can make sure that we get that published on the website as well as on the Facebook and through social media posts. As Dr. Bedden alluded to earlier, in the fact that we have the prom and the post-prom already scheduled for July the 31st. Just a little bit of talk about that is understand that we did this with no risk. And what I mean by that is, first of all, if we're not in a good place with the government, we may not get to even have this. But right now, we did this with no risk in the fact that we have students being able to register and do all these pieces, and we've been allowed to hold those fees until I think July the 24th is the day we have to make the final decision based upon if it's red, green, or yellow. And all of our vendors, as well as our students, will be able to get their money back, and all of our vendors are not going to charge us any fees. That's what I mean by no risk. So we have no risk involved in that up until that day. And again, when we had these plans, the prom originally was scheduled for May 1st, so we had to make plans in front of this, still hoping that we can get to Santander for graduation. So, but that's the reason why you see some of those pieces as well. We do have a class gathering planned for the week of November the 23rd, and understand our tradition at Boyertown has always been the students get their yearbooks back between October and November. We try to schedule that around homecoming, so that when the students are back in normally for semester breaks or for mini breaks from colleges, universities, as well as military and those other areas, they have an opportunity to come in and get the yearbook. Well, this year, what we'd like to do is typically what we do is we do graduation practice, we come back, and then we do the ceremony practice, then we come back and we do like a picnic with the students, then we break, and then we all meet back at the arena that evening for the ceremony. So what we're going to do is, if we don't get to go to Santander, then we're going to hold that money in that class account, so that the students, when they come back this November time, we're hoping at that point we should be able to maybe give them some kind of a picnic, a gathering, and they can get the yearbooks and do some social pieces and possibly have their cap and gown and do pictures at that point as well. So that's kind of those pieces in there. The other thing that I really wanted to put out there was this, because in many of the posts that we've got, I'm going to talk about this in the next slide in just a second, but many of the posts we got was this, many of the parents really wanted to have a picture of their student walking across the stage and getting that diploma. And we understand how critically important that is to everybody. So one of the things that I wanted to put out for future date was that on June the 4th of 2020, now we already, that will be the graduation date of the class of 2021. So in June 4th of 2021, we have the arena that day. We have it that whole day. So the part of having it that whole day is going to be important for us. Is we could set up a time between 4 and 6 p.m. So any students who wanted to come in and get their picture taken, I would make that available to them and myself available to them so that they could come in, walk across that stage. It would be the exact stage they would be walking on this year, and they could get those pictures. I will have the photographers there to take those professional pictures along the way. So that's kind of one of the things, and even in the next slide we're going to go to, we've added some things based upon some feedback we've gotten from the community over the last 24 hours, is that, you know, we needed to add one more thing. This is just other information here that we talked about. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to continue to monitor and watch this and just figure out where we're going to be at with our families and what we can do to try to help our seniors be celebrated as much as we possibly can. So you can go to the next slide. So the additional opportunity that we worked out today and we're working with based upon the feedback we were getting from the families are in addition to holding that June 4th schedule, just in case, we want to provide another opportunity. So we were looking at the week of July the 27th of 2020. So we would allow students to, and again, this is all very conditional. If we're in a yellow or a green phase, to allow students to come into the Bash Auditorium, we'll set the stage up there. So if students would elect to come in, we will set up a time frame where they would come in so that we could maintain social distancing. They would get there, they would drive up, they would have their caps and gowns on, they would come out. We would try to give the opportunity for the students pictures. And I'm going to say this with a caveat, and the reason I'm saying this right now is one of the other avenues that I've gone to figure out any of these places is having our contracted photographers to come in and take pictures. And right now they've refused to do anything until all stay-at-home orders have been lifted. So when I say that, I mean, I've gone and talked to the Life Touch, for example, for us, and they are refusing to come until those stay-at-home orders are lifted, not only for us, but also for them. So I'm just throwing that out there as well. So when I say professional photographers, we want to be able to have them have that opportunity to get those pictures taken as well. At that point, we would also, depending upon the rules and regulations at that particular time, is have a small number of guests that be allowed to come in and maybe take a picture themselves or their own video or whatever they want to across on that particular stage. But again, this is all being in accordance with governor's guidance and health department guidance allowing us to do this. And it may be involving as much as face masks, gloves, and other social distancing guidelines and recommendations. And it could be even including taking temperature of students before they're allowed to enter the building or even their guests. So, but the point of it is we wanted to throw another piece out there so that if students could have the opportunity to come and get their pictures taken that, you know, on that auditorium stage, we wanted to start that on that week of July the 27th. So I'm sure there's a lot things that I've missed in here, and I apologize because I'm trying to make it succinct and to the point. But I just want you to understand that we've taken this very, very seriously, and we've tried to do as many things as we can to try to make this as real and a great experience for all of our students.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Foley. Does the board have any questions? I see Mr. Foos's hand up.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I do want to point out, I think this has been very difficult. This is all kind of uncharted waters. The presentation tonight was helpful to add some context and the thought process. And I do think there a lot of the criticism I've seen. I was trying to withhold judgment until seeing this and getting more information. And a lot of the criticism I've seen, I think some of it is clearly forward to. It represents the culmination of all this hard work. And I think trying to capture some of those aspects is important. I do want to point out that Dr. Foley last year, I remember in planning that graduation, made some substantial changes to try to make it more student-centered. And so I believe like that is at the heart of what he would like to do with graduation. Last year, he removed a lot of the presentations from the adults, from the board president, from the superintendent. I mean, all of that was student focused. The speeches were from students, and it went really smoothly, and we got really good feedback. So I really trust that that Dr. Foley is putting students at the center of this, and that's why I think some of the criticism that has been put out there has been a little unfair, because I do believe that to be the case. I don't think enough people are acknowledging that. But I did have a couple questions. First is, did we compare it to other school districts and what they're doing? Because I've seen examples from some school districts that look very similar to ours. I've also seen examples where people are doing some very interesting things, and maybe they have those opportunities. And it sounds like we looked into some of those. But how did we compare what other districts are doing and how we might be able to, or why we might not be able to do similar things?
In several of the situations, I mean, I've looked at a lot of them, not only from the state of Pennsylvania, but from also other states. One of the biggest factors that I think that we need to make sure that everybody understands is with a class of 500. It is, when you start looking at a class of 500, it's very difficult to make sure that everything is all inclusive. And still be able to do some of the things that some of our smaller school districts around us are doing. I don't know if you have a specific one in particular, but we've looked at a lot of things, and some of the school districts that are our size, and some of the things that they are saying that they're going to be doing. If you look at what happens with the stay-at-home orders and the orders from the Department of Health, and I'm a little concerned. So.
Yeah, I think one of the what we're doing looks, in my opinion, very similar to what like O&J and a couple other districts are doing. There might be some slight differences here or there, but a lot of them, the main components of it are very similar. There are some districts, like Pottsgrove has a lot of things that they put on the calendar, but they also give the caveat that it's very likely none of these things happen. I think we've taken, I think you took a good step in showing that the feedback that was provided, you provided another opportunity for folks over the summer if we're able to. I don't know that we'll be able to, but planning for that I think is a good gesture, because we're all hoping that any day things change. In the field that I'm in, I don't think it'll be changing for quite some time, but trying to prepare is a good thing. So
that was part of this whole presentation, and part of the thought process. This was trying to be very realistic. My background, like similar to yours, is science, and watching how these things are viruses are growing, things like that is pretty spooky. So the point of the matter of it is we wanted to be realistic. Instead of having a whole bunch of dates that were going to be canceled and postponed, I'd rather have something that was definitely in place, and then alternatives to go after that. My fear is if we had not done that, and then it still keeps getting postponed, that we have done nothing to celebrate our seniors, and that would be a tragedy.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question, so the last question I had was, what type of feedback and input was received from students and families of graduating seniors in the decision-making process?
Well, when we sent this originally out, we really involved them more in the prompt questions at that point. I had a lot of individual conversations. We didn't send necessarily a survey out, and the reason I didn't really wanted to send the survey out at this point was if everybody is requesting the traditional graduation, which is people have been either said okay, and I've gotten probably equally a number of feedback positive saying I'm glad you did it this way. Because people realize that we're actually protecting them and their families and their loved ones as well by following what the guidelines are. But we didn't send a survey out per se specifically on graduation, just because the fear there was all right, you said you want a traditional graduation, but now I can't deliver that. So does that mean I don't listen to the survey?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foose. Next, I see Mrs. Denon's hand up.
I have mine up too.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Dero.
So just a couple of clarifications, Dr. Foley, and some of the questions that I'm going to be asking of you are questions that I have heard from, obviously many parents, and I know it's hard for everybody to 100 people to ask the questions. So just to preface that, just piggybacking on what Mr. Foose had asked. So I know that some schools had gotten like the parents and the student government and all those people together. So I understand you didn't want to do a survey about how you would want this, but had you collaborated with any of those other student groups? I'm assuming you have for the virtual part.
Oh yeah, I've been in contact with our student government, our student officers on a regular basis. Now, when I say that, we've had several Zoom meetings, and then I know, for example, the class advisor and those student leadership meet probably 2 or 3 times a week for several hours at a time. And what I'm saying is the surveys that we're sending out now, or the forms that we're sending out now, is dealing with, or they're collecting all of these the text that the students would want to say, as well as the video clips, because we've worked with them to try to process and come up with the best solution that we can under the circumstances.
Okay, and then I know that the one thing that the parents were saying, and I see that you've done this now, is the walk across the stage. So I know Spring Forward is doing. A lot of parents were saying, why aren't we doing what Spring Forward is doing? And they actually are having their kids walk across the stage. And they're doing it over like 4 or 5 days, I think, is what they're doing. So from what I'm hearing you say is that you don't feel comfortable because if we do this on June 4th, there's a very high likelihood that we're going to be having these kids have to wear masks and whatnot. Is that so? Was that your thinking behind why the walking across the stage thing on June 4th was out? Even if you did that over, even if you recorded it and did it over, 4 or 5 days, was that your thinking?
Yeah, that was my thinking. In fact, we did the math on that. It would take us 9 hours for 5 days to get all of our students to walk across the stage and still have social distancing and have masks and gloves on. So we actually considered that, but I'm thinking, do we really want to watch our kids walk across the stage with a mask?
Okay. And the last question is, have we considered, if we do not have to spend the expense of the Santander arena, have we considered using that money to put towards these signs? I know that a lot of schools, and I think Boyertown has done it too. I saw something on Facebook that parents could purchase a sign for like $25 and have a sign outside of on their kids, on their lawn. So is there anything that we are considering doing for our seniors, since we're not going to be, it doesn't look like we'll be spending that money on the Santander arena?
I don't have anything organized at this point because we were kind of waiting to see if Santander was going to happen or not. As we get closer to that, then we can make other decisions with that funding, based upon, excuse me, the approval that we can get. But we are working with the Boyertown Foundation, and in the foundation is provided an opportunity for students to get those signs, for those yard signs. And also we have, I believe our association has volunteered to donate some of those signs for students who could not necessarily afford them. So again, they're being as charitable as they can be, is also to get those signs out for our students.
Okay, and just my last question is, when you were talking about all of the venues and areas that you looked into, and you said that you were talking with Chief Leatherman and some other people. So do you feel that really, based on the governor's orders, and that the police and stuff were discouraging you from doing any type of car parade or anything like that? I know that other districts are doing that, but again, they're probably doing that on their property, so it's a little bit different. Is that kind of what?
That is correct. There are different rules for, obviously, for private property, and if they choose to do that on private property, they also, I guess the health officials can deal with that. But the point of it is yes, we've been discouraged from trying to do that at this point.
Okay.
This is
All right,
Ms.
thank you.
Mrs. Denon, this is Mrs. Torsha. I have a follow-up because I was on the phone today with both Chief Leatherman, and I also was on with Councilwoman Carnes, Lori Carnes. And Chief Leatherman is emphatic about not having a parade due to not being able to control the people that would be showing up. His biggest concern is that, you know, even though we're saying, you know, cars driving down streets, he's saying, how would I stop 3,000 people from gathering who would want to, you know, be watching or celebrating, you know, their students? They've also said that if they were to have the provision to have the roads closed, it would be a greater risk if emergencies occurred, because there wouldn't be barricades, you know, like if there were a street fair up. So the councilwoman was trying to, you know, to help support us. We were looking at the date of when the sidewalk sale was supposed to be, because there were different things already in place. But Chief said that he, you know, his job is to protect people, and having them out on a parade would be going against all of the stay put or stay at home provisions. And he just sees that it logistically would become, you know, just him trying to keep these people away, and it would be very difficult. And I had just spoken to them about 5:30 this afternoon, just to follow up on another lead that I had gotten.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I truly believe, you know, despite, you know, what I'm reading, that the administration and the principals at the high school, and you, Mrs. Torsha, just the fact that you followed up on some of these calls, have truly, you know, worked hard and really do care about trying to give our seniors an opportunity. And, you know, I just want to say to all the parents that I have talked to or have sent emails or texts that I think all of us on the board would want nothing more than to have that graduation. And it is just, you know, sad. It's disappointing. I know that the administrators feel the same way. I do appreciate what everyone is doing. And, you know, I'm sure that if there's anything that can be done as we move forward to June 4th, we will still be looking into those different options. But I do totally understand that with the governor's guidelines, and, you know, whether or not you agree that you need to wear masks or you need to social distance, it's really a moot point. We're a school district and we need to follow the state guidelines. So thank you, Dr. Foley, for that presentation and all that you've been all the effort you've been putting into this.
Thank you, but we're not done yet.
Okay, Mrs. Deeroff.
Dr. Foley, I knew you would say that. You're not done yet. I didn't expect you to be. Thank you for what you've done so far. I just have a couple questions so I understand. I had put in I don't know what you call it, an idea about the stadium to be used the same as we always did, and the football field, and have our stage there. And I think it was measured off. I think we could do it in 2 different settings, possibly in one. Did you think about that and still honor the 6 foot whatever.
Distancing, yes. Yeah, we did actually look at that. The unknown that I have on that right now is, based upon prior board action, is the construction there is supposed to start on May the 8th. So I don't know kind of where we're at in that process. I'll have a better feeling next week. But again, if there's something that we can do, obviously we want to be able to help our kids as much as we can. But I mean, yes, we did look at that.
If that was a possibility, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying if it is a possibility, we could possibly hold up construction to start. if that was in the way.
Again, we're going to be held by the guidelines of the large groups. If we could get to yellow, then we could do it in groups of 25. If we could get to green, obviously, then we have a little more latitude. But until we get at least to yellow, it's going to be difficult to do pretty much anything because the stay-at-home order is going to be in place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And did I hear you say We already made a decision. If we did, I apologize. I must have been out of space that day. Did we already made a decision to have graduation next year in Santander?
We have to reserve the Santana Arena a year in advance, or we don't get a date. So I did go ahead and make reservations for June 4th next year, because at that point we still weren't sure where the construction pieces were going to be for the stadium based upon the pieces that were going on back and forth.
And that was communicated back out to the board when we were asked to do an analysis of the cost factor. And that analysis showed that we actually spent less money in Santander than we were spending holding it in our own stadium. And also with the feedback and that we presented that the students gave us, that their choice was to have it in Santander, and from the families and their feedback that they gave us. And as I mentioned earlier, we got nothing but significant positive feedback on the experience that was held last year.
That's amazing, because nothing like walking on that field to get your diploma and walking up those steps. That's amazing. That our people wanted it at Santander. Thank you.
Part of the feedback we received, Mrs. Duroff, on that point was the fact that sometimes that was not even going to be the case with regards to the dependence upon weather and the rescheduling, that they liked the climate control, and they liked the guaranteed fact that they actually could have their graduation on established days with the planning. The other factors that they shared with us was the increased number of participants who were allowed to attend our graduation were some of the factors that played into the feedback we received from the students.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Nyman?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Foley, for all of this. I do understand, because I've been reading all my emails coming in from all the parents and I also saw there's a petition out. So I'm concerned. These students have worked very, very hard. These parents have gone through nightmares through some of their students. Not to have something virtual is just not anywhere close to what they're used to. So I really would love to see them get something. And even if we have to take a week to do it, I think we've got to try to find something that we can do that gives them the same semblance of crossing that stage. I have been racking my brain out, and I was thinking today at work, we have the front of the old building, and there's two different steps there, two different sets of steps. Couldn't we do something out front, even if it's 10 people at a time, 10 students at a time, and having us videotape it? Something, can we work with something to give them the feeling of crossing over? That's the big thing I'm hearing. The virtual thing, okay, it's an idea, but it's not even giving them close to what is normal. And waiting till next year is not an option. And anything can happen between now and Thanksgiving. And maybe come Thanksgiving, we won't be able to, or they won't be here, or somebody will be sick, or we've got to try to find something to do now. And I've pondered over the front of that building, and I think if we can use the front of the building and both sides of the school, there should be something we could do to graduate these students. And like I said, even if it takes a whole week, I'm willing to be there every night doing whatever I have to do this for these students. It's something they deserve. So I'm challenging you, Dr. Foley.
Ms. Nyman, I'm confused. I don't know if you saw what he added in the end with the July opportunity. to do it the high school.
But that's still not a guarantee the kids are going to be here or be allowed to do it.
Well, I think that what he was presenting was also trying to still offer an opportunity that hopefully it would not require some time with masks and other stuff, either that's no guarantee. But part of the challenge that I thought I heard you articulating, Dr. Foley, was the fact that where we are now in current status, and maybe it's okay with the parents, I don't know, but you were trying to not have the mask stuff, and you picked the July date, hoping that some time had passed to try to at least do that by walking across the stage and trying to give a stage feeling at least.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. No, that's correct. I mean, again, with the
But let me
stay-at-home
ask
orders.
this question to her point, though, about students being here. What was the feedback? Because you did the survey on the prom.
Right.
What was the feedback about the number of students who would still be here for that?
Well, after 31 years, the other thing that we know, and the feedback we got there is every day that you're beyond the school ending, you lose more students because they have other things going on in their lives. They have military, which that's still going on, and people are still leaving for those. We still have students getting involved in their colleges and their college classes and stuff like that. So they begin to move on. So each day away from that date, it gets a little tougher for us to be able to make it all inclusive, which is why we went with what we have now, but with other opportunities, because obviously that week of the 27th, hopefully we can at least be in yellow at that point where we can have students come in and walk across the stage. And also,
Right,
again, in November, when we're coming back for the picnic, they could do that, or their get together. We could possibly do something then too.
Right, but I think her question, her response to my question is a valid one. And only possible indication of that is you did get feedback on the prom. How many students? I know you lose more students, but
yep.
I guess her question is like on the July 27th, or part of her comment is that too late? Even then, and the only indicator I'm asking you was what was the type of the number of feedback, or how many students would be around in July?
When we
Do you
sent
have
the
any
survey,
idea?
when we went the survey out for the students about the prom, we got a little over 200 responses back. So we got about a little less than half of the class. And this coming week will be an important week for us, because this week is when they have to really start committing to that, if they're going to go or not. So we'll have more information on that this coming week. The final date for the sign up for the prom right now is actually May 15th. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of good data on that yet, because they're still trying to decide if that's going to be important to them or not.
Lisa, I have a comment.
Sure. Oh, and Mrs. Darrow?
I didn't know Ms. Nyman is finished.
Oh, I apologize. I thought she was. Mrs. Nyman, are you finished?
I'll let it go and I'll follow up with Dr. Foley later. I'll keep racking my brain out.
Okay,
Good.
thank you. Okay, Mrs. Darrow?
I know Dr. Foley's going to find a way to do this, but when you think about it, they wore masks and helmets when they walked on the moon, so why not wear a mask to walk across the stage? It'll be unique, it'll be different, the kids will get what they want. So they don't mind wearing a mask. That's all.
Can I just chime in one quick second yet?
Sure, go ahead, Mrs. Nyman.
If anybody's uncomfortable with doing it, they don't have to attend. But I'm hearing from a lot of students, they want something physical, something to remember by. And maybe the parents wouldn't care if they're wearing a mask. It's just they want the memory from all the hard work. So I will keep racking my brain out. And as I think of things, Dr. Foley, I'll be sending you an email.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other board member have comment? Okay. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Foley.
Thank you.
I had 2 graduating seniors, and I had a senior graduate last year and one the year before. So this is very close to my heart. It's really heartbreaking, the situation we find ourselves in, the senior class and their parents. It's very difficult. I can also say that having had high school students, I've worked with Dr. Foley in the past, and I've always known him to care very much for the students, to be very student-centered, very student-focused, and have great consideration for what is best for them. So having said that, I think, let me just check the agenda right. I think we are ready for public comment.
Yes, when you switch to order, you have 3 people that signed up.
Okay.
I'm going to unmute and allow to talk. Miss Denise Hunderman is the first in the timestamp that was sent to me. And so Ms. Hunderman has been unmuted.
I'm sorry, before you start it, there is a 3-minute limit, so I just wanted to make sure that.
Oh, yes, I'm aware.
That was recognized. Sorry, we usually say that ahead of time.
Mrs. Hunderman, you will see a timer on the screen, hopefully.
Yep, I see it. So I first want to just, thank you for allowing me the time to speak tonight. Mr. Foose and Ms. Denon, you touched on a lot of my points, so I do appreciate that. But Ms. Neiman, I love you. You are my best friend, and you hit the nail right on the head, and I appreciate that. And I probably speak on behalf of a lot of the parents tonight and the senior class when we say thank you. I could hear in your voice, your passion, and how upset you are for this class, as we all are. And it's a tough time. We do understand that we are in an unprecedented time. And when I hear and see other schools that are making efforts, it kind of questions, where's Boyertown at? I know we spoke about Springford. Well, Springford has 662 graduating seniors, which is a lot more than us. So how are they able to do a graduation in 4 days where we can't? So that's kind of concerning. It just doesn't seem that we're putting in, I guess, all the effort that we should be, like was put in with prom and so forth. Again, I think the main thing that I have is the in-person graduation. I don't think anybody's asking for the traditional graduation, because I do believe that's just not going to happen. But there's no reason why an in-person, everybody abiding by the social distancing guidelines, and if they have to wear a mask. I don't think any student or parent would have any issue wearing a mask. The whole point is to walk that stage and to receive their diploma. What they've worked 13 years for, I think, is what it comes down to. And as far as signs are concerned, I mean, at this point, I don't feel there's probably any need for the school to spend that money, because I know there's been a lot of stuff going around on Facebook that parents have already purchased the signs themselves. So that money could probably be used elsewhere. And that's pretty much, what I had. I do appreciate, I know I've sent several emails myself. I do appreciate, the board and administration. Dr. Ben, I know you've responded to me as well. So I do appreciate you guys reading and responding and taking all the suggestions for alternatives. But that was pretty much what I had. So I do appreciate it. But like I said, Ms. Neiman, you're my hero.
You had Miss Rosado, who I will unmute to talk. Miss Rosado, are you there? Melissa Rosado? Okay. Ms. Rosado?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm not, this is a different Zoom setup than what I'm used to, so. Well, I'm glad you can hear me now.
As soon as you start, I'll start the timer, Ms. Rosado.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna ditto what Denise said, and Ms. Naaman, thank you for advocating on our kids' behalf. My purpose for asking to speak tonight is just to advocate for our kids. Our kids aren't feeling supported. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from my own child, and that's what I'm hearing from other students. I don't think that they're, you know, that they're feeling honored in any way, and they're starting to just kind of pull away, even from their academics, like it doesn't matter, and they don't, you know, my daughter told me tonight it was a waste of my time, you know, to attend this board meeting, because she said, you know, what we want, what parents want, doesn't matter. So I'm just giving you the students' perspective, and I appreciate, Mr. Foley, all the different avenues that you know, that you've tried, and I would just like for you to continue to keep considering some of the options, especially that were just mentioned by Ms. Naaman, you know, towards the end of the meeting. Just please don't close the door. Please keep all options available. We all want to, we certainly understand that we can't have a traditional graduation with the circumstances that we're in. But our kids have worked hard, and they deserve something to be honored. And if there is funding to do something, I agree with Denise about the yard signs. There's been community members. A lot of us have gone out and purchased signs to, you know, to honor our children. As part of the community, you know, we've started a BASH adoption page, so community members can adopt seniors and celebrate them. But we just want our kids to feel special. And I appreciate everyone's efforts. I know everyone is struggling, and at the end of the day, you know, we all want to stay safe and healthy, but find a way and get creative to allow these kids to get what they want, and that is to figure out a creative way to let them walk. So I appreciate the board and Mr. Foley and everyone, and I'm just asking to please keep considering options and find a way to reach out to the students to let them know how much you care about them. I really feel like that's important. So thank you.
The other signed up speaker is Michelle Sweisford. I hope I got that right. I apologize. Give me 1 second, Mrs. Sweisford, to find you on here. Ms. Sweisford, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, and you said my name sort of correctly. It is Schweisfort. It's a very German name, so thank you.
Again, I apologize, and when you.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay, and you can start the timer whenever you're ready.
Okay.
I just first I do want to thank Dr. Foley for all of his work that he's put into researching different ideas for the seniors, and I know that this is difficult for all of us, but I think my sentiment follows the other two parents that already spoke, and just that I think what I want to hear and what the other students want to hear and my student wants to hear is that we're not going to give up coming up with different avenues to make them feel that this 2020 graduation is going to be something memorable in a different kind of capacity. You know, I just felt in the beginning, until listening to all of you talk, that, you know, maybe we were just going to brush it off and just go right to the virtual graduation. I am happy to hear that Dr. Foley came up with another resolution for late July, and hopefully we can get that to go through. But I just think I want to hear a commitment from the school on behalf of the students that you guys will continue to try to do something important for the kids. And Mrs. Nyman, I can't thank you enough for everything that you said. I am in your voting region, so I am beyond impressed with your comments and feelings towards the students. And thank you to the other board members who answered my email today. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, guys.
Okay, I believe that that concludes everyone who had signed up for community comment. And I'm sorry, Dr. Bedden, did you have any comments you wanted to?
Yes, thank you. First, I can't remember which parent that said it, but so I'll say to all three of you, what you did tonight was part of the process. So whoever student that said, don't bother or waste your time, it wasn't. One of the reasons we have these committee meetings and one of the reasons we put this on the agenda is that I don't think anybody on this team thinks they have all the answers. I do want to thank Dr. Foley for his continued efforts. At times I know he probably has gotten frustrated with me when because we do read the emails and I do forward the emails to him and ask him to look into it. Even Miss Torsia today, when I got another email and I asked, do you want me to check into this? But I also hope that what people understand is that part of the process is demonstrating what you heard about Dr. Foley and trusting him to start with a plan and to give guidance and direction and not try to take it over as a superintendent because they know the students. I also felt like as someone who's only been here a couple of years, it would be inappropriate for me to make a unilateral decision and just think I know what's best as a superintendent. In fact, he's been here longer than I have. Members of his team has been here longer than I have with regards to, and they've worked with the students. I do trust him with regards to what I've seen as a commitment to try to be student-centered. Even today in conversation with them, picking up on the comments that we saw as a theme about trying to still find a way to try to have a physical presence. One of our dilemmas was shared today with his trying to find a way to make sure that students are recognized. And we heard some of you say tonight that you're okay with the mask. But I also want to make sure that what they have tried to do is recognize that the high school is try to do something that is inclusive as much as possible and not create a solution that automatically eliminates a student from participating in it because we created that solution and did that to them. And that's one of the things that they've always articulated to me as part of the challenge. What is that opportunity? So I think that one is the virtual is the one that makes sure everybody's get recognized. And then they came out with, after reviewing the messages that we went over today, the July 27th. I think the biggest thing I walk away with is an understanding that people are concerned how many people will still be around. But I think that if people understand that social mitigation and things will have to be in place, I'm sure we'll sit and revisit and see if there's an opportunity sooner than July. But the closer we move up, the more likelihood it will be required. I do want people to understand the difference between what he mentioned earlier about being in yellow and green versus in a red status and trying to factor that in also. And I do acknowledge and want to say publicly to those who may be listening on our staff that, you saw pictures of how hard they've been working both at home, but also in person, continuing to serve our community. We have unfortunately had some staff members experience loss during this. And I know Even Dr. Foley has had some medical challenges within his own household. So I want to thank you for continuing to plow forward with your team to try to find a solution in this process. You know, this is what it's about. And I do thank every parent who voiced their concern in a professional and very collaborative manner. That makes a difference when we receive those, rather than it being something that assuming that someone has taken a position when they haven't. And so it's very helpful, and I encourage you to continue to do that. That is something that we do take time to read, and thank you for doing that, and thank you for speaking on behalf of your children.
Dr. Bedden, I see that Kyle Raynor has his hand raised. I believe that is the 2020 class president. Can we unmute that person to confirm that that is who it is? And if so, I'd like to give him the opportunity to speak.
Hi, my name's Kyle Rayner. For the past 3 years, I've served as the class of 2020 class president. And just as a representative of the student body, me and the class officers would like to personally thank Dr. Foley for everything that you've been doing. For the past month and a half, we've been working very closely with Dr. Foley with prom and graduation, and it's become very abundantly clear to me that he is doing everything in his possibility to support us, to make us feel as special as we can. I think a lot of the student body understands that it's a very strange time that we're in right now. And just truly from the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to thank you for all the work that you do and all the care that you put into it.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. We appreciate that. Okay, next on the agenda is committee comment. So does anybody have committee comment? I see Mr. Foos's hand is raised.
Mrs. Hogan, I'd like to talk then.
Sure, I'll put you in there.
I'd like to thank the student for speaking, and also congratulations on the upcoming graduation. It really was and is great to hear from community members and parents weighing in, especially with ideas, and a lot of them explain, you know, that they are understanding of the difficulties of this, and so I did want to echo what was just said, that it really is impactful and meaningful to get those communications on, you know, any number of topics. But I wanted to say that, and also echo another sentiment that I heard a couple of times over, to continue being open to new ideas, and you know, if anybody has an idea that seems feasible, that is a way to highlight and honor the students, I think that's a great thing. And even if it's just maybe not something we can do, but something we can as a district help facilitate. If there are businesses that want to do things and they want to know how they can support the seniors, if they can reach out to a member of the administration and get some guidance or help, I think that would be great too, because I think it's more than just what maybe we want to do or are able to do. I think there are a lot of people looking for ways to help, and if we can help facilitate that, I think we should try to take on that role as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foos. Mrs. Nyman.
Okay, first I want to say thank you to those parents. I'm not used to getting compliments, but I do want to say thank you. It was very nice. And it is all about the students. It's students, students, students. Having lived here all my life, I understand what it's like to go there. And then I wanted to make sure it was okay with Dr. Bedden that I get in touch with Dr. Foley over the next couple days with any ideas to rack through with him.
That's fine. As I said earlier, we don't think we have all the ideas, so we are continuing, and Dr. Foley has been committed. Like I said, I've probably worn out my welcome with him at times, sending him stuff to look at. again, because there are people who've been here longer than I have that I've tried to trust in their evaluation of stuff. So that's absolutely fine. And because he'll keep everyone in the loop on the team with it. So please feel free.
Thank you. Dr. Foley, I will be emailing you my phone number so that we can be in touch because I'll be racking my brain out for you.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. McWhorter?
Yes, so I just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, our students, your students, they are so important to us. It's why we're all here, why we have spent the past, I don't know, 2.5 hours. And so they are so important to us. And if you've been through the whole meeting, you can see how much is going on for our students. So they do matter. They are so important to us. So I have been an essential worker. I've been going to work every day. I also have my father living with me at the moment. And it's been pretty stressful, worrying about whether or not I was bringing anything home to him the whole time for these past 2 months. And I'm so glad that Dr. Foley has put the health and safety and following the rules and regulations put forth by the governor to keep everybody safe, because it's worrisome, you know, especially for people. Oh, my cat just showed up. Just how you're, as you interact with more people, there's more of a chance of bringing stuff home to family members, to extended family members, and it is very stressful. Thought on that. And I'm sure Dr. Foley is going to be keeping all options available because I know how he is, and he will be looking into every opportunity. And I also want to thank all the parents who reached out to us today. We had got a lot of emails from parents. I appreciate that. I have read all of them, and I know, I see how important it is for you to have your students walk by the stage, walk over the stage, across the stage. I really hope it can happen for them. I really do. So that's it. I just want to thank everybody. Dr. Foley, you've done a great job. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hemingway?
Yes, thank you. I've been looking forward to this presentation for a while now. I do feel a lot more comfortable knowing that there is a plan. I'm not going to lie, I was getting a little bit aggravated, and I can feel how the community was feeling that same aggravation when decisions are being made without really our control. But I appreciate the comment from, his name was Kyle, correct? The student representative. To hear his confidence in Dr. Foley just kind of solidified my thoughts through the presentation that, you know, things are being taken care of, and I'm confident that, you know, Dr. Foley is on top of it, and he's going to provide an experience for these students. I like the idea that he does have the option to show up in July if you want to continue on, and also the idea that, you know, everything is still on the table, and I trust that he is a daily reviewing every option possible.
Lisa, I want to say something.
Sure, Mrs. Jarrett, excuse me. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
Sorry.
And that's okay. But what I did do, I did like to see the involvement from the community. Now, some of the emails were a little bit on the nasty side, to be honest with you, and some of the responses I didn't appreciate. But I think in a whole, the tone was that, you know, these kids are important to us. We need to have some involvement. People want to have a voice and be heard. And from what I'm hearing from this presentation tonight, Dr. Foley really is listening and doing his best efforts to, you know, to provide this experience for our kids. So I appreciate it, Dr. Foley. Thank you so much for your efforts. And I honestly am resting much easier now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Dira?
I just want to tell everybody to stay safe. I want the kids to really be careful because they're soon going to walk a stage somewhere. We're going to see to that. And I was a mom too, and I think I would have got a little nasty with my emails, so I didn't mind. Thank you. Good night.
Does any other board member have comment? Okay, so I'm just going to say my husband is an essential worker. He's a first responder. And I agree that we really need to take the safety measures seriously. This is a difficult time, and as a mother, I really do feel for the senior class, and especially for the moms and dads. I know my kids were like, you know, they could take or leave going to graduation. They had fun in the end, but it was really for me. I wanted to see them walk, and it was really important to me. So I would really like to see that happen for the class of 2020 as well. But we have to make sure we do it in a way that's safe and that follows the guidelines. I appreciate all the work that was put into it. I do appreciate everyone who commented. It's great to see people coming and advocating for their kids and letting us know how they feel about the issues. That's really wonderful, and it's so appreciated, and it's very helpful as a board member to hear what people are feeling and thinking. So I do appreciate that. I think that concludes tonight's board meeting. We do have a meeting next Tuesday. It will be a virtual meeting. It is the Finance, Facilities, and Operations Committee meeting. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Giroux.
You're welcome.
Second by Mrs. McWhorter. Okay, thank you. That adjourns this meeting. Thank you all.
Right.
Good night.